How do Okay, hey everybody. Welcome to the Black Girls Chat Room.
Hey, you're on.
Okay, good. I have Alani on with me. All right, maybe I should turn this. Oh, you're turning sideways? Okay. I'm like, I don't know which way.
Back and forth for hours.
Okay. All
Be
right.
fair.
Okay, so hey everybody, welcome to our live. Today we will be talking about Black women and this expectation of being superhuman and being super strong. So there's this idea that Black women are incredibly strong emotionally and physically, and while that can be a positive, it tends to be pretty detrimental to the Black woman.
Yeah.
And Alani, well, I'm BB. I'm sorry. I'm BB. And I have, right, and I have Alani here with me today. And she's going to tell you a little bit about how we kind of came to this conclusion that the Black woman has superhuman strength and that the notion of the strong Black woman.
Right. So to understand like the implications in the present, we have to look to the past, right? So if we look at historically in the history especially, it's been said in modern day that doctors to Black women are the same as police are to Black men, right? If you look from slavery, beliefs such as Black people have thicker skin and Black people can't get diseases such as yellow fever and stuff like that. You take a group of people and you say, oh, they're not the same as me on a human level. This is anatomically how I'm right, how I am, and this is anatomically how someone else is. That enables you to distance yourself from that person, from that group in astronomical ways, and it almost like allows mass monstrosities in human rights to happen, right? Like slavery, Holocaust. What do they have in common? You're distancing them from the victim to the oppressors, right? You're distancing them any way that you can. So this almost allows the oppression and the hurting of Black people, Black women especially, to continue, right? So if you look at the pain on a physical level, so we've got some statistics over here, if I can actually say that word. In a retrospective study, Todd et al. Found that Black patients significantly less likely than white patients to receive analgesics, which is pain tolerance drugs, in fractures in emergency rooms. So the statistics were actually 57% to 74%, despite having similar reports of pain. Another study, metastatic cancer or recurrent cancer, 35% of racial minority patients received the appropriate prescriptions compared to 50% of non-minority patients, right? So we've got this trend in Black patients, ethnic minority patients being believed that they do not have the same level of, oh, they find they can tolerate this pain in comparison to white people. So this has almost diffused over from a physical side in medicine, anatomical, as it has to an emotional side in the modern world now. So this stereotype of, oh, you're a strong, independent Black woman can be seen as dangerous because, well, they're believing that we can put up with this emotional side because, you know, it's the distance between Black women and a white woman, right? I know you mentioned that you had read Medical Apartheid. Who was that by? Sorry,
Harriet Washington.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So the same trends could be seen in that, right?
Yeah, and in that book, she details a lot about the atrocities that Black men and women have been put through during the time of enslavement. So, for example, one of the example she mentions is how Black women were used for gynecological surgeries and experimentation. And
Right.
when that was taking place, they weren't giving any type of anesthesia to these Black women. They were literally dealing with this physical pain. And when we think of surgery, we already know this is a painful thing. Like literally doctors put us under for a reason. So you're physically cutting into the woman's flesh and you're acting like she has no reason to react or have any type of reaction to pain. So,
And it's absolutely horrifying how this physical level, in the sense that this was used to distance Black women from what is seen as human, has almost diffused into modern day society, in the sense that we are now not expecting Black women to be able to respond in the same emotional sense as other races, right?
right.
And trauma can happen, and we're just disregarding them in these experiences.
Right. The psychological implications are very real. And we saw it with the Me Too movement. With the Me Too movement, a lot of women, a lot of Black women in particular, were questioned heavily. There was a lot of scrutiny given to them, and their stories weren't believed. For example, Lupita Nyong'o, she was a Black woman who came out, right, and she's a survivor of Harvey Weinstein.
Yeah.
However, when she told her story after numerous white women had already come out and told theirs, she was questioned way more heavily. The idea of her story was just so unbelievable. She should have known exactly what she was getting into. You know what I mean? Like,
and time again, that it's, why can't we believe Black women the first time that they tell us? This idea that, oh, if somebody comes out with a sexual abuse allegation, it's, oh, they must be lying, before we even question, is this person capable of the type of actions, right?
Exactly. And I understand the idea of trying to protect a male, because there have been false rape allegations.
Of course,
but when we look at Black women giving their stories, it's a complete difference in how the reaction is given. It's oftentimes questioned to like ideas that I can't even fathom. And it's already difficult for women to come forward with stories of sexual assault and sexual abuse. But when it's a Black woman, it makes it even more difficult, because you almost question yourself, like, well, am I gonna be looked at as the agitator as opposed to the victim?
Got that level of police as well, because when I went to a protest in Manchester, a lot of the experiences that Black women were sharing of their sexual abuse, it was the reaction of the police are not giving the same level of caring towards Black women's sexual allegations as they have white women. I mean, it's hard to make a sexual abuse allegation as a woman in general, but when you put that on top of being a Black woman, it's just a completely different experience, because there's that duality and oppression that, as we were talking in, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
We look at we can look at the R. Kelly situation, right? You've got Black underage girls, and they do have to be stated as that, because many people refer to them as Black women. They weren't Black women, they were Black girls, and we're seeing this constant trend in the over-sexualization of Black girls, and being believed to be much older than they are, being told that you are Black women. This is the over-sexualization that not allows for acts, but almost tries to justify them, right?
Right. And it's not just the over-sexualization, but it's also the adultification. Like you mentioned, we're talking about young Black girls, but people are so pressed to say that they're Black women. And they're not. Like, they are literally children and teenagers.
And when you look at that entire event as a whole, they say it in the Surviving R. Kelly documentary. If you have not watched that already, for our audience, please do, because it's it's a complete eye-opening piece of content. But they said it in the documentary, and we're going to say it again here. If the victims were white women were white girls, it would have not gone down in the same sense that it did with these black underage girls. And that's not in the sense of the abuse wouldn't have happened, but the response to the abuse would have been very different. Because it said in the documentary that there was like members of his crew that saw things happening with very underage girls. They let underage girls into studios without checking ID. This just would not have happened if these were white underage girls, because of the social hierarchy of our society, right?
Absolutely. And then when we look at the R. Kelly situation, we also see not just victim blaming, but parent blaming. You see that a lot of these parents were looking to create a future, create an opportunity for their children, and they weren't expecting that their child was going to be sexually abused. It's just like when you send your child to summer camp, you're not hoping or thinking that the camp instructor is going to be violating your child. And even more, we see that with the young girl that R. Kelly urinated on, and there was a video, and that's kind of what led to the lawsuit the first time against him. It was a joke. It was made into a joke. It was people on the time and time again.
The experiences of black women are being flipped into sketches. I mean, there were South Park sketches of it. There was comedy, people making tweets, people making jokes on Instagram. It's this weird thing that when we see black girls, black women go through a traumatic experience, the number one response is let's respond to this with humor. Which like, why are we not able to empathize with human beings that have received abuse? It just
absolutely
stuns me.
But I think it does go back to the medical aspect of it, of stripping the humanity away and recognizing our flesh as not as sensitive, let alone to our feelings not being as sensitive. And in the Black community, it is a popular thing to have comedic relief when it comes to a serious situation. But you don't see that comedy come out nearly as much. Like when we're talking about an unarmed Black man being shot, there is no comedy sketches to try to relieve the pain behind it. So why is it that for Black women, we find it absolutely okay to make us the butt of the joke? It's just...
every time we have to make the or pay tribute to how colorism plays in this as well, because it constantly seems to be that women, we heckle and heckle and heckle and heckle, right? But then light-skinned women, it's like, oh no, this isn't a joke, this isn't funny, this happened to you, you know, like in the same sense that we're saying the R. Kelly situation, it wouldn't have been the same if these were white women. It wouldn't have been the same if it was light-skinned women as well, right? Because you've got that differentiation in experience once again.
Absolutely. And even with the Me Too movement, going back to that real quick, when we look at the trajectory of it, right? The founder, Tarana Burke, is a dark-skinned Black woman. She founded the movement 10 years before there was any traction or any real publication of it. And it got credited to Alyssa Milano, a white American actress, because she just seemed to be a better face of the movement. And when we look at social movements, we do tend to see that the women or the men put at the forefront tend to be of a lighter complexion, because there is an air of privilege and an air of confidence that comes along with having a lighter complexion. And it's not only dehumanizing to fellow Black people, but it's just dehumanizing to the entire Black community, because now you're putting a value, you're attaching a price tag to my complexion on top of the fact that you already have done that to my race.
1,000,000%, and it's putting almost this is an acceptable level of Black, like this level we will accept, and it goes back to the light-skinned women being allowed to I don't know, work in the house as slaves, you know. It goes that time of this is the level of Black we will accept, this is when it's gone too far. And in 2020 we've got the surging Black Lives Matter movement colorism needs to be something that we are combating just as much as it, right?
Absolutely, because the idea of colorism really lends to, it's racism within our community. There's really no way to sugarcoat it. It's racism within our community, and it's not just in ideas of employment and housing, even though all of those things are absolutely affected. Like, there are absolutely real world implications when it comes to colorism, but there's also implications when it comes to the fact of believing a survivor when they're telling you their story. There's implications of not taking their story and making it a joke. And we see that when it's a constant thing. Like, I wonder if Meg Thee Stallion was light-skinned, if the reaction would be different.
100%. For those of you who might not know what has happened with the Meg Thee Stallion situation, so she was in the car with Tory Lanez and he shot her twice in the feet. She didn't tell the police at first that it happened, because you've got black people in a car ringing police. I mean,
with
you know how it goes down. Just look at 2020. We know how that goes down. She lied about the situation, then she came out and told what had actually happened. It was, I think there was an allegation that Tory Lanez said he shot her because she was transgender.
Which is so crazy.
Like,
are you kidding?
That justifies it. The public are just going to go, oh, yeah, if she's transgender, okay, that's fine. Like, we thought you were crazy at first, but no, we get it.
Right, but no, that makes sense. Yeah, so there's an element of transphobia as well. Like,
1,000%. Megan's personality is quite loud, confident black woman. Her haters attach her with, like, the ghetto, ratchet stereotype, right? And to an extent, she's like semantically reclaimed that through her music, you know, Savage, the song. However, like, that stereotype that black women are aggressive and loud seems to have removed the idea that this experience that she went through, this traumatic event, somehow didn't affect her emotionally. And once again, it was met with jokes, absolute shaming on Twitter, on Instagram, just as R. Kelly's victims received, and time again, it's in black women's abuse with humor.
And then we even saw, like, you mentioned Twitter. On Twitter, it was trending, like, hashtag Tory Lanez energy. Like, if your girlfriend, your wife, your fiance, whatever, your significant other acts up, that's the type of energy we need to have. And while I think a majority of the people who are making tweets, majority of the black men who are making tweets like that were probably joking, you have to understand that sending that message out there, there's probably quite a few people who aren't joking and who are thinking that it's okay.
1,000%. And not only that, but it almost triggers, like, responses of, she's had to go back to that trauma time and time again. Like, she had to cry, bawl her eyes out on a live twice, show evidence of her injuries in order for people to go, for some people to go, oh, right, okay, maybe this wasn't too much of a joke. But then others continue to press. And if you look at the situation with A$AP Rocky, when he got arrested in Sweden,
absolutely,
the situation that he was in the wrong with, it was assault, people were, free A$AP, free my guy. And it's sort of like, this is
there's a disconnect.
Black men and black women, and it's just not balanced at all.
No, we run to protect black men, and I do believe that black men need protection. I'm not saying at all, and it actually annoys me, the fact that I even have to make this disclaimer, but I'm not saying at all that black men don't deserve protection, but what I am saying is that there has to be some sort of reciprocity. It has to be a balance. Like, we can't, as soon as something bad, negative, atrocious happens to the black man, run to their rescue and then not have the same type of energy given to us.
And the same thing happened, well, not to the same extent, which is very interesting, with Breonna Taylor, right?
Yeah.
We did have the jokes and we did have the memification of her, and it's almost switched more to being marketized as the Black Lives Matter movement.
Yeah.
And we've seen this performative activism, right? But in the same sense, there's the question, right? We were talking about this previously. If she had lived through this experience, would she have received the same amount of support and platform that she has now?
And she wouldn't have.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's concerning that we are only worth this amount of energy in death, right?
And that, again, you were talking about the medical aspect of it, and it's almost as if death brings a reality to the situation. Like, oh, wow, they're not here forever. We do have to say something. And there's this quote, it's like, give me my flowers while I'm alive and not while I'm dead. And it's like, I feel like that was the case with the Breonna Taylor situation. Like, she's getting her flowers now because she passed. But I honestly believe that if she was still alive, like, it would have been all types of questions. Well, was her boyfriend dealing drugs? Was she involved with people she shouldn't have been involved with?
Questions are still being asked, even in her death, right? So
right.
The thought to like think how it would have been if she was alive, it's just horrifying, right? Because this is the we've slim 50% have been absolutely supportive, 50% are still giving this reaction. So what would these statistics be if she had lived through it?
Right, absolutely. And it reminds me of Sandra Bland. Like, we know that we saw the dash cam, we saw the camera video from inside of the jail facility. And it's like, if Sandra Bland had lived, would the narrative have shifted from protect this Black woman, say her name, to, well, she was being aggressive. Well, she could have just complied with the officer, right? And those were notions.
The stereotype of aggression and ghetto and ratchet that somehow strips someone's humanity, which.
Right. And we hear all of these negative things, and some people are going to really feel some type of way about what I'm about to say, but we hear all of these negative connotations, right, when it comes from the white public in particular, and from the public that completely 100% supports police agencies regardless of if they're right or wrong. We hear, well, you should have just complied. You should have just done this. You should have just done that. But when we look at the Black woman and we look at protecting the Black woman, the responses to Black woman trauma is very reminiscent of the response of white people to Black trauma. It's always, what should I do? What could they have done differently? Not, should that officer have calmed down and actually viewed this situation? So,
obviously, it's almost as if for Black women, darker skinned women especially, the Black man has almost become what the white woman is, or the white man, right?
Absolutely.
Experience for Black men that allows them to become the oppressors, and Black women to stand back and sort of be like, whoa,
what's going on?
Protecting me, right?
Exactly. And Chance the Rapper, he actually tweeted a screenshot of a quote by Bell Hooks. And in that quote, she essentially compares the Black man to the white woman. And I don't think she's wrong. The Black man and the white woman have a lot in common in the sense that they have a duality of oppression. They can be oppressed, but they also have the power to oppress another group. And when it comes to Black men, their power to oppress another group, we are the group that's being oppressed. So it's just, it's disheartening and it's hurtful. And there's actually a Facebook status, one of my sorors, her name is Tony, that she had written on Facebook, and I just wanted to share it. So word for word, it says, if our efforts aren't going to be reciprocated in the quality and quantity at which we offer support, then Black women are going to have to shift our focus to self-preservation. And it's an interesting concept. Now we're looking at, in the US, we have this phrase called burning the cape. So, and the idea of burning the cape is not running to the aid of Black men right away, because that's what we tend to do. Black women tend to be at the forefront of all fights for liberation. So it's like, is it time that we take a step back?
Into ourselves and the movement of ourselves, because it's interesting if you look at the comparison to Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, right? We were talking about this previously, right? Breonna Taylor's death happened, was it
about a month before
George Floyd's death? and nobody knew until George Floyd. George Floyd, his murderers, because I'm not going to call them police.
Right, they are murderers.
His murderers have been brought to justice, yeah? Breonna Taylor, there has been no arrest made. So
Nothing.
you have to imagine that if, like you said previously, if George Floyd's death had never happened, would we know about Breonna Taylor to the extent that we do now?
And I don't think we would. I think
Exactly.
the people in the same city as her would know, and they would be out. But I don't think we as a nation would know.
Exactly. And isn't that scary that time and time again, the death, the abuse of Black women can go unheard and swept under the carpet? And it's almost as if we are reliant on Black men to push our platform that people know about us, right?
Absolutely. It puts us in between a rock and a hard place, because it's like, do we support? And if we don't, like, you don't even know what to do. Like, it's like you're not getting what you need from somebody. And if we try to put it into like much similar terms, right? We look at a relationship, let's say, of a young couple. If the man or the woman or whoever in that relationship feels like they're not getting what they need from their significant other, they're going to leave the relationship. So it's almost in a sense like, do Black women separate ourselves from Black men because we're not getting what we need at all? And it reminds me of Oluwatoyin Salau. Her birthday was just yesterday. And she was very instrumental in the fight for Black lives, especially for Black men. And then to turn around and have a Black man sexually assault her and kill her, like, it's like you don't even care about what we're doing or saying.
And in the face of the movement as well, for those who are completely against Black Lives Matter, the All Lives Matter, you know, we know them.
Right.
It's humiliating, because it's sort of like, oh, they're saying Black Lives Matter, but look at how their own people, look at how their own men are treating them, look at how and it's sort of like, where do we go from there?
Absolutely, because it's sad to say, because it shouldn't matter, but again, we were talking about humanity being stripped from the Black community in general, right? But more importantly, from Black women. But if we look at the fact that Black men have killed us, have maimed us, have sexually abused us, and when you turn around and you say, well, you guys should respect us, it's like, but your own doesn't respect you. So why should your life matter to me when your life doesn't matter to your own, you know?
Yeah, and where can you go from there? Where can you go? It leaves the question, doesn't it, of burning the cave, right?
Yeah, and then when I look at Tamika Mallory, the founder of the Black Lives Matter movement, right? And she is always on the front lines. Like, she is at every protest, she is at every news conference. She is literally putting herself at risk. And I look at her and I respect her, right? But then I sit back, like, for me, at the beginning of the George Floyd situation, I was thinking about going to a protest not too far from where I live. And right now I'm in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So the police officers were tear gassing, beating, just brutalizing protesters. And I'm like, am I really about to go out here and put my body, my mind at risk for a Black man who I don't know if he would have done the same for me? And then it came out later, not much later, but it came out later, that he had like a white girlfriend, fiance, whatever. And she was sitting at home. She said, George wouldn't want you guys to do this. So I'm like, why can Becky sit in the crib and be okay? But me, I have to go out here and risk my well-being. You know what I mean? Like, I could die.
The emotional and physical exhaustion that it takes as well, because when I have been to some of these protests, but that's only because in the scale of the UK, in no sense is the same scale of aggression from the police, right? It's not the same scale as it is in America. But in that sense, you see from people speaking, from people even just marching, you see that the trauma that it can cause, because people are having to reflect on, it's not just about one person. People are having to reflect on their own experiences and their own experiences of racial abuse, their own experiences of sexual abuse as Black women, as Black men. So the amount of exhaustion and energy it takes and takes and takes for you to even attend these things. But then when you learn that the person you're representing wouldn't have done the same if it was a dark-skinned woman in comparison to a light-skinned woman, do you know what I mean? Like, that change in it is absolutely mind-boggling. And it's sort of like, wow, if there's that TikTok quote, isn't there, that's going around, if you can't, where the hell do you go, right?
Absolutely. It's like, what do I do? And then that reminds me again of Stephon Clark. Like, Stephon Clark, he was shot and killed in his grandmother's backyard in Sacramento, California on March 18th in 2018. And I remember this like it was yesterday, because I was going so hard for this man on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter. Like, I was just so outraged by it, only to turn around and find out like a week later that he had tweeted, and I'm gonna read it word for word. He had tweeted, "I don't want nothing Black but an Xbox. Dark B words bring dark days." And it's like, it's almost like you just took a dagger and stabbed me, because I'm really out here writing
like
for you.
Betrayal, doesn't it? Right?
Yes.
Because, like we've speaking about previously, you're putting the amount of energy, emotional, physical, into this person you're defending, because the amount of defensiveness that comes back from white people, especially in these times, you're defending and putting out so much.
Absolutely.
That energy back and find out that information. It's just, where do you go?
And it's like, what do you do? And it's just, it's painful emotionally. It messes with your psyche too, because it's like, if Black women, it's not if, this is a fact. Black women birthed the Black community. You cannot have the Black community without Black women. Black women are trendsetters. Black women literally are the creators of Black culture. And this is everywhere, right? We're not just talking about the US, not just talking about the UK. We're talking about all over the world. And for you to continue to degrade and to harm Black women, there's no excuse. So if we look back at the Meg Thee Stallion situation, right? Some people were saying, oh, well, maybe it's because she was transgender. That is absolutely not an excuse. Now we're looking at transphobia, because whatever you got going on in your shirt and inside of your pants is none of my business. And if somebody is dealing with someone who is trans, you know what I mean? I would hope that there's some sort of honest communication, but regardless, that's not a reason to kill somebody. You're removing a life from this earth.
Time and time again, we're seeing that it's becoming a pattern to be able to try to justify Black women's trauma, right? So
absolutely.
Meg Thee Stallion, everyone was going off with your jokes and everything like that, and then you're using the transgender to try and justify it as well. Again and again,
And then, so like, okay, we have seen some support for Meg Thee Stallion. I'm not gonna act like there isn't any support. There absolutely has been. We've heard Bun B, the rapper, he's come out, he's from Houston. He's definitely like, if this happened in Houston, we'd be riding for her right now. Like, Tory Lanez would not even exist, basically. And that's absolutely the energy that it should be, right? We've seen singer Mario, he's come out in support of her. But it's almost as if like, you don't really hear too much from Black rappers, because Boosie, who has been very vocal, since we're talking about transgender, right, has been very vocal about D Wade's daughter, who is transgender. But when it came to being asked about the Meg Thee Stallion and Tory Lanez situation, he was mute. He was like, no, I'm not going to speak on it. I'm cool with both Meg, and I'm cool with, what's that boy's name? Tory Lanez. You know what I mean? Like,
and it's like that quote, isn't it, that we see time and time again, especially it's been in the Me Too movement a lot. She's somebody's daughter, she's somebody's niece, she's somebody's friend. Time and time again, Black girls cannot just be themselves. They have to be related to somebody else in order to matter, right? So it was in the sense, he should care because he's got a daughter. He should care anyway, right?
Period. Because they are a person. They are
Yeah.
a person, regardless. And that actually kind of reminds me of Keke Palmer, because in 2017, she did a Breakfast Club interview and she was talking about how she felt sexually intimidated by Trey Songz. She just
Right.
came out and said like she was hiding in a closet until she felt safe. Like she did not feel comfortable. And instead of people rallying behind her, not playing his music anymore, what did they do? They made jokes about her. They said she shouldn't have shown up if she didn't know what time it was. And then they ignored her. But now here we are, 3 years later in 2020, and you've got two white models coming out saying that, oh, Trey Songz violated me sexually. And now attention is being given.
It's this pattern of not believing Black women the first time they tell you. Like, we
Absolutely.
saw it with and Lupita, and now we're seeing it again. And it's almost as if, I can't imagine the absolute frustration to scream and scream and scream and scream about a perpetrator, and then for somebody else to do it, and it's like, oh, okay, we'll take them seriously now. You know?
Absolutely. It's like, you disregarded me then. Like, what's the point in me coming forward now? Because at the end of the day, let's be honest, when it comes to rape cases and sexual abuse situations, you tend to need the previous victims to come forward, the previous survivors to come forward and speak their story in the court of law. But what survivor and what victim is going to want to come forward after you completely disregarded me? You completely disregarded me. And I just keep thinking, like, I feel so bad for Meg Thee Stallion, because one of the things that she said in her live that had me like completely messed up was that I spared him, but y'all don't spare me. And again,
even in that traumatic experience with bullet holes in her feet, about herself, she was thinking about, hold on, the climate that we're in now, I'm in the car with a Black man calling the police and saying that he's assaulted me.
He has a gun.
Yeah, that's the first place her head went when there was a literal pain in her foot, right?
And even if her immediate thought wasn't, let me just protect Tory, it was, let me just protect all four of us, all four Black people who's in this car with a weapon. The fact of the matter is, she was putting other people before herself. She was exhibiting that superhuman strength.
Isn't that such a depiction of the Black woman in today's society, that we are
absolutely
in situations of trauma, in situations of absolute distress? It's, let me think about protecting the Black man, let me think about protecting others before I think about myself. And
right.
It brings us back to burning the cape again.
Absolutely. And when I hear things like, I think this rapper's name is Cash Talk. I've never heard of him or his music, but he came out and he was like, oh, well, Meg Thee Stallion is 6 foot tall and Tory Lanez is 5'2". First of all, I don't care if Meg Thee Stallion is 8'8" and Tory Lanez is 2'3".
100%.
There is no justification for him shooting her. And the fact of the matter is, Black men tend to run to this idea of justifiability as opposed to just having the conversation and being like, that was messed up. Like, it's okay to say something is wrong.
Right. And how easy would have that been in the situation, the climate that we're in at the moment, if Tory Lanez would have just come out and said, right, I did this, it was messed up, I need to deal with the consequences of it, right? But now we've got this massive thing, we've got the conspiracy. I mean,
oh no, you're breaking. Oh, okay. So, and it's like, you could have, even if Tory Lanez didn't come out himself and say, I was wrong, I have an ego issue, I have Napoleon syndrome because I'm short and I feel like I need to act like I'm big and bad, right? Like, the Napoleon complex is real and a lot of men deal with it. And obviously that is an issue for Tory Lanez. But even if he didn't come out and say that and he decided to remain quiet, his camp should remain quiet too. Like the fact that his publicists and his people are coming out and trying to make it seem like, oh, well, she swung on him and she was jealous because of Kylie. If he shot Kylie Jenner, there would be no more Tory Lanez on Apple Music, Spotify, nothing.
Right. You
Nothing.
can only imagine the social uproar to if he had shot Kylie Jenner in comparison to Meg. And the fact that that is even a concept just depicts the absolute oppression of the Black woman, right?
Yeah, and again, it's like when we talk about the idea and the notion of burning the cape, you almost put yourself in the situation. For me personally, as a Black woman, I put myself in the stance of like, I really feel like Black men are the white women of the Black community. Period. There is nothing that anybody else can say to me that will change my mind about that. I understand there's gendered oppression for Black men. I understand there's racial oppression for Black men. But when a Black man can sit there and say, well, what did she do to deserve to get shot? That's problematic. And that just highlights the oppression, that the duality of your oppression. Because as a Black woman, I can't sit here and be like, well, what did she do to get shot? And genuinely mean it. You know what I mean? Like I have to
fight in some way, because that is, you are a woman, they are a woman. I mean, I could never sit back and go, oh, well, what was Meg doing for Tory to have shot her, right?
And that's just so silly. It's so silly. And I don't know about you, but when I think about Oluwatoyin, when I think about Sandra Bland, when I think about Breonna Taylor, I really want to be able to hashtag say her name while they're still here. I don't want to only have to hashtag say her name after she's passed, after you realize the fragility of life. Because once we actually do bring that humanity back, once we kind of strip away this superhuman complex of the Black woman, I think we'll be able to understand, like, this isn't just a game. Like, it's not funny to have a woman shot in her feet. It's not funny to have a woman shot at all.
Period.
And the fact that, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Which leaves that question, right? Is it time, especially for our audience, whether you guys agree, let us know. Is it time to, right?
Yeah, so let us know down below, should we burn the cape? Is it time to shift the focus from protecting the Black community as a whole to protecting the Black woman? Because, and this is like my last example, and then I know we're gonna say goodbye, but when we think of the Black family, at least in the US, like we say, oh, change those shorts because Uncle Charlie's coming over, right? That's again putting the protection of the Black man ahead of the protection of the Black girl. Not even Black woman, but the Black girl.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's a good spot to leave it in. Should we be burning the cape? Should we shift the focus to the protection of Black women? Is it now about self-preservation as opposed to preserving the Black community? So
this is live on the profile of Inside a Black Girl's Mind. So please let us know in the comments.
Absolutely, comment down below.
In the cape, right?
Yeah, is that what we should do? So thank you guys so much for joining us.
We'll see you next week with the next.
Absolutely. All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.